Hello everyone and welcome to the Weekly Science. Today we have 5 scientists with us and each one of them will tell you about a subject. And the first subject is by Mimi and Edvin. So over to them.
Thanks a lot for that, Dennis. So we're here to talk about biomimicry. So what is that actually? Well, it's when we copy stuff off from the animal world or the plants world. We look at what happens in the nature, and then we copy it off ourselves. So some good examples, some new examples rather, is the shark skin. They've looked at the shark skin and they've tried to amplify it on submarines and etc. to make them faster and even lighter. Also, the strings that the spiders make, scientists have looked at, and they want to factorize those so we can use them in science and other areas, of course. So yeah, we've read an article called "The Biomimics" by Wendy Prisnitz, and I thought it was truly incredible. She talks about everything that has to do with biomimicry, and she describes it very well. You get real excited and inspired by what she says. So I really liked it. But what did you think, Mimi?
Well, I wasn't the biggest of fans.
Oh,
I
really?
thought that she just copied off her material, and I also thought it was hard to find what she actually thought about it. Don't get me wrong, I really believe in biomimicry, but I'm just not a big fan of what she wrote.
Okay, well, I agree that she could have described everything a little bit more, even though I think she did a good job. But I still think it's an incredible article, and I get really inspired by it, so you should definitely read it, in my opinion. Yeah, I really liked it, actually.
I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. I felt like her description was pretty boring, and the things I thought was interesting in this article was were the things that she quoted from. And in the end of the text, Wendy tells us about her sources, and I've checked them up, and they were all better written than hers, in my opinion. That is.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. But hearing about the flying ornithopter inspired by the bird's mechanic to fly, that just blew my mind, and I got really inspired. So still, I really like it. But you can have different thoughts about this article, of course.
Yes. Yeah, agree to disagree. That was all from us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for both Edwin and Mimi. And now we'll continue to the scientist Matthew, who will tell you about sports and drugs and combining them. So over to Matthew.
Hello, my name is Matthew Dunn, and I have done a big survey in Australia. Their 8 national sporting organizations have taken part. The survey is about drug using among elite athletes in Australia, and the survey is based by something called the false consensus effect. That is when the tendency for people to assume that others share their behaviors and attitudes to a greater extent than they actually do. The athletes in the survey were asking 2 questions. For example, drug using and drugs among athletes in their own sport and in sport in general. The results were in 3 categories: non-users, recent users, and lifetime users. And the lifetime users and the recent users thought that more athletes were taking drugs than they actually did. And that's provide that the false consensus effect do exist. And the false consensus effect can help us to understand drug using among athletes and to further experience and education in the future.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And now we'll continue to our scientist Felix, who will tell you something about table tennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Now, my name is Felix, and I am the author of the article called Interface Dynamics of Table Tennis. The main purpose of making this article was for me to discuss how the ball will act when hit by a racket in the sport table tennis. I started out with collecting facts about the history in table tennis, especially the rubbers on the racket, which is a huge part of how the ball will act. The actual game table tennis was invented in the early 19th century and has a base in Great Britain. There it has developed a lot through time. In 1951, the sponge and the rubber racket was invented, and that was when the rotation of the ball started to matter. Now, I have made an experiment on this, and the purpose with it was to prove that the angle of the racket and the roughness in the rubber will decide on how the ball will act when hit. My experimental equipment was mainly a setup of heat and air supply systems. My method was to let hot air blow at the ball, which simulates a hit from a racket and sets the ball in spin. Thereafter, the ball bounced at the racket, which had a specific angle and roughness in the rubber. And with a high-speed camera, advanced mathematics and physics, I managed to prove my hypothesis.
Thank you for that, Felix. And now we'll go to our scientist, Jürgen Lademann, who will tell you about the carotenoids in the human skin. Yes, thank you, Dennis. My name is Jürgen Lademann, and I will tell you about the carotenoids in human skin. I have done research about the carotenoids in human skin, and I found out that the amount of carotenoids reflect your lifestyle. So if you live a healthy life and eating a lot of fruit and vegetables, the amount will increase. But if you don't live a healthy life, like drinking or smoking, or live a life in stress and don't eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, the amount will decrease. And you need the carotenoids to defend the antioxidants in your skin to prevent the risks of cancer and pre-aging skin. And you will also improve your immune defense with the amount of carotenoids. And I have also found out that you can measure this amount of carotenoids by using some processes with lights and lasers. And by that you can find out if you need to increase or decrease your amount of carotenoids, because it's not always that good to have too much carotenoids. Well, I don't have too much to say about that, but it's important to think of this because it can lead to death by cancer, or you can get pre-aging skin. So back to Dennis. Yes, and thank you, Jürgen Lademann, and thank you all of the other scientists. That was all for today's Weekly Science, and we'll see you next week.